It's often said of the Founding Fathers that they were deists. Perhaps you've heard that word. A deist is someone who believes that God created the world, but then he left it to run on its own, kind of like a watchmaker creates a watch, winds it up, and then leaves it. And that's how the deists tended to think about a God. They did not believe in the personal intervention of God in history. Now, you just read Washington's own words. Does that sound like a deist to you? Even for those among our founders that clearly were deists, like Benjamin Franklin. The idea of a passive, distant, uninvolved deity was not a mindset that they could long sustain in light of all that they experienced in those years. Several years after the war was won, our young nation was about to come apart at the seams because of the fragile form of government they had set up in place. These Articles of Confederation, if you recall. It had to be replaced, or the country would fragment. Well, there was a critical point in the Constitutional Convention in 1787. Delegates' tempers were starting to flare. Disagreements were rife. It looked like at any moment the whole thing was going to collapse. Until wise old Benjamin Franklin, the deist, stood up and addressed the assembly. And he called for the council to pray. Here are his words. He said this: "In the beginning of the contest with Britain, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayers in this room for divine protection. Our prayers, sir, were heard, and they were graciously answered. All of us who were engaged in the struggle must have observed frequent instances of a superintending providence in our favor. I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings, that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. I firmly believe this," Benjamin Franklin said. And while his motion was more or less tabled, so frayed were the conditions in the room at that time, his calming words helped the delegates to catch a second wind, and it wasn't long after that before the remarkable Constitution was completed, ready to be sent to the States.